Hey there, everyone. That sexy nerd is back again. And we're watching Extra History's Cleopatra. And I gotta say, I've always been a fan, so interested of the story of Cleopatra ever since I was 9 years old. And I had watched that old TV movie, Cleopatra. It was Timothy, and I don't remember the actress who played Cleopatra. A beautiful Chilean woman, though. I forget, I can't remember her name. But I remember Timothy Dalton was Julius Caesar, and Mark Antony was played by...
Fucking ho dunk, po dunk, well then there, motherfuckers!
Yeah, just a great, it was a great time, honestly. It was not accurate. It was not accurate, but it was a little accurate, but it's probably the best interpretation of Cleopatra I've ever seen. I've never seen the Elizabeth, the original, the 1963 one, but I don't know. I really do have to compare the two. But anyway, I really want to see Extra History's version of Cleopatra. So let's not wait any longer. So please smash that like button if you want to see more sexy and nerdy content. Let's do this thing, y'all.
How do you start the story of one of the most famous women in history? Maybe with her birth? A little bit conventional. Okay, what about with her death? Nah, that seems gauche. Come back later, Aspen. Oh, I know. How about... Nah, that seems gauche. Come back later, Aspen. Oh, I know. How about we start with a drunken wager? Yeah, now we're talking. 41 BCE. Cleopatra, pharaoh of Egypt, is at her palace in Alexandria, entertaining her new beau, the Roman general and politician Mark Antony. The official reason for Antony's visit is to prepare for a new campaign against Rome's hated enemy in the east, the Parthians. In reality, however, Antony has fallen head over sandals in love with Cleopatra, and the two are using this time before the campaign to enjoy life together. Each night, the lovers throw a luxurious banquet in honor of their union and revel in an evening of excess. And they're joined by a group of court friends and hangers-on, playfully referred to by Cleopatra as the Order of the Inimitable Life. The group dines off gold plates, and afterward spends the night drinking and playing games. And one evening, after being stuffed with food and drink, Antony idly mentions that the two have reached the height of their revels. There's nowhere to go from here. But Cleopatra scoffs and tells Antony that she could spend 10 million sesterces on a single banquet, to which Antony tells her to prove it. So the next night, Cleopatra holds a new banquet. And while it's sumptuous, it's no greater than the couple's usual excesses. Midway through the meal, Antony boasts that he'd won the wager. But at that moment, the queen declares that she's now ready to spend her 10 million sesterces and calls for a cup of vinegar. As the revelers look on, Cleopatra then takes off one of her priceless pearl earrings and drops it into the cup. And the fine pearl, one of the largest in the world at the time, disintegrates in the glass. Then she drinks and wins the bet. Though this was a small event in the queen's life, this story does illustrate three important things. First, how to make an incredibly expensive, albeit gnarly, cocktail. Second, that Cleopatra was willing to go to any length to win. And third, that no one in the ancient world, not even the most powerful men in Rome, were about to get one over on the Queen of the Nile. Julius Caesar, Mark Antony, and Octavian may fill the history books, but in her life, Cleopatra dunked on them all. And in many ways, she continues to dunk on them 2 millennia after her death. Nope, not your cue yet. Go wait in the green room, we'll call you. So how is it that she ended up getting the better of Rome's greatest figures in an era of high male chauvinism? While a lot of it has to do with characteristics unique to Cleopatra, another important factor was Cleopatra's family, the Ptolemies. A family with so many tales of intrigue, incest, and backstabbing that dealing with the Romans must have seemed like a walk in the park. Because before she romanced Roman generals and captured our imaginations, Cleopatra had to first survive her family. The story of the Ptolemies starts, like a lot of other stories in the ancient world, with Alexander the Great. In the 4th century BCE, as Alexander ran roughshod over the Mediterranean world, his entourage included his close childhood friend Ptolemy. And Ptolemy was simultaneously Alexander's military commander, personal bodyguard, and official historian, chronicling Alexander's deeds so everyone knew just how great the Great was. See, in the ancient world, you weren't anyone unless you had someone recording your deeds and denigrating your enemies. In fact, historians of the time were more like a public relations officer rather than a scholar. Okay. When Alexander died without an heir in 323 BCE, the members of his retinue stepped up to fill the power vacuum, and Ptolemy was one of those men. And though they founded several successor states to Alexander's empire, Ptolemy captured the jewel in the crown, Egypt. But he also captured an even more valuable prize, Alexander's corpse. Alexander and his commanders were Macedonian Greeks. And in ancient Macedonia, a dead king's successors asserted their claim by conducting the burial rituals of their fallen leader. So by possessing Alexander's body, Ptolemy laid claim to his throne and his legacy. Though the corpse was originally destined to be buried in Macedonia, Ptolemy intercepted Alexander's body and buried it in the Egyptian city of Memphis. Then when the Ptolemaic dynasty took Alexandria as their seat of power, they moved the dead king to a massive new tomb there. That symbolic victory went a long way toward legitimizing Ptolemy's rule for his fellow Macedonians and Greeks, who were helping him run Egypt, but that was only part of the equation. Because Ptolemy's Egypt was a foreign-led kingdom, and without Egyptian support, it wasn't going to last. To that end, Ptolemy and his successors looked for ways to combine their Greco-Macedonian rule with local customs and traditions. Though they still considered themselves part of the Greek world, the Ptolemies adopted the trappings and imagery of the ancient pharaohs. In addition to trappings and dress, however, the Ptolemies also pursued, with gusto, another practice of the ancient pharaohs, incestuous marriage. By the 3rd century BCE, the Ptolemies regularly married brother and sister, making them co-rulers of Egypt, often with the older of the two siblings, regardless of gender, playing the leading role in the kingdom. These marriages not only helped to keep the dynasty in the family, but also played a role in courting the support of Egyptians, who expected their leaders to replicate the model of rule set out by the ruling deities, Isis and Osiris. And in their quest to maintain power, the Ptolemies were willing to do whatever it took. And because of that willingness to fit into Egyptian society, the Ptolemies thrived. Alexandria became the greatest city in the Mediterranean world, an epicenter for commerce and culture, and the site of incredible landmarks like the Great Library and Pharaoh's Lighthouse. And although the Ptolemies were not known for their military prowess, they successfully maintained control via strategic alliances with strong neighbors, like Rome, offering money and grain in exchange for protection. Now one could posit that this lack of military success may seem like a weakness, but look at it this way. Rome had to do all of the work, while the Ptolemies sat back and enjoyed the richest lifestyle the ancient world had to offer. Rome got the glory, sure, but Egypt got the gold, essentially playing it smarter, not harder.
Wow.
But for all of their wealth and political skill, the Ptolemies couldn't get out of their own way. All that money and power led to infighting, and a lot, and I mean a lot, of murder. Fratricide, sororicide, matricide, patricide, and of course when royal advisors got involved, plain old vanilla homicide. And there's really too much history to go through here, but just know that the Ptolemy family were a real nest of vipers. Still not yet, but in fairness, I kinda set you up for that one, so apologies.
No, he's a cobra.
By the time of Cleopatra's birth in 69 BCE, all of this infighting and murder had weakened the kingdom. Case in point, consider how Cleopatra herself came to the throne. First, her cousin Ptolemy XI had to be assassinated. Then her sister Cleopatra VI was assassinated. Then her other sister, Berenice IV, was also assassinated.
When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. There is no middle ground.
And finally, her father, Ptolemy XII, managed to die of a disease. Wow, that's a pretty relatively easy exit, all things considered. Especially for a guy who bribed the Romans to invade Alexandria and execute his own daughter. Only after all that did the 11-year-old Ptolemy XIII and his sister Cleopatra VII, the then 18-year-old Cleopatra from our tale, ascend to the throne as co-rulers. And in this blood-soaked context, Cleopatra stepped onto the world stage. Unlike many of her siblings, she'd lived long enough to receive an impressive education in math, astronomy, literature, and rhetoric. She could speak 7 different languages, and had become the first Ptolemaic ruler to speak fluent Egyptian. During the previous decade, she'd been at her father's side as he ruled, both in Alexandria and when he spent time exiled in Rome. She possessed experience, intellect, money, power, and if not outright classical beauty, a certain indescribable charm and magnetism that made her hard to resist. And most importantly of all, she was a Ptolemy through and through. capable of cutthroat, cold-blooded action when necessary. And she would rely on all of these skills and attributes over the next decade to deftly avoid treachery, build important alliances, and seduce the greatest men of the era, all while maintaining her independence. And we'll get into all of that next week.
I've always loved her story. I mean, yeah, kind of like, everything is like, a gray area with her because, she did what she could. So maybe the Romans were kind of right about her, but you still got to respect her playing the game and playing it well. It really was. It really is a great and fascinating story. I love it. That's why and not only that, I love Rome in general, but the fact that she was able to play most of these men against each other and still come out and mostly on top until eventually, she killed herself with a snake. It's just a really fascinating story. That's, again, that movie in 1999. That's just when I fell in love with the story and everything. That was actually the beginning of like me loving Rome. Actually, I didn't pay attention in history when I was younger, and then that's when I started paying attention in history. So, but anyway, we'll continue the episodes even more next week. So please smash that like button if you want to see more sexy and nerdy content, and subscribe if you think I deserve it. And I'll see y'all in the next video.